Delivering his ministerial statement on Singapore's anti-drug policy in Parliament recently, our guest today argued for the death penalty to continue, as it is an effective deterrent against drug abuse. He also said that Singapore is at war and must do all it can to protect innocent lives. Home Affairs and Law Minister Mr. K. Shanmugam is here today as our esteemed guest. Salam sejahtera and welcome, Mr. Shanmugam, to tBH.
Thank you.
Well, Minister, in your ministerial statement in Parliament last week, you talked about Singapore's drug control policy. And your comment on Singapore's tough stance against drugs is well known. And why is this necessary? And what are the considerations when we have this tough stance?
Drug abuse is a serious problem all over the world. And in the ministerial statement, I try to bring it across to Singaporeans. I think most Singaporeans understand, as the survey results show. The numbers are mind-boggling. If you look at the WHO report, World Health Organization 2021, 2019, drug abuse caused 600,000 deaths around the world globally. 600,000. And if you look at the World Drug Report 2023 last year, you look at drug use disorders, they cost an estimated 31 million years of healthy life lost. 31 million years. I mean, when people hear these numbers, sometimes they don't realize, because these are just numbers, but 31 million years of healthy life lost because of disability and premature deaths. This is huge. And, every region in the world is affected by drugs. So people, sometimes it's a question of trying to get across these numbers, what's happening, what does it mean for people's lives. You look at Europe. European countries are first world countries, right? Mostly. They have been very hard hit by drugs because, I would argue, because of the policies they've taken. Their ports, European ports, have been described by a major international weekly as drug hubs, and they are safe terrain for narcos. You take Netherlands, first world country, well run, well respected, well regarded. Last year, they seized over 60,000 kilograms of cocaine. The Dutch customs seized that. In port city of Rotterdam, you have children as young as 14. They are being recruited as cocaine collectors to go to the containers in the ships and get the drugs, right? Because children you suspect them less. But imagine the child's life becomes a drug courier and gets into gangs. January of this year, the mayor of Amsterdam, Halsema, said that the Netherlands risks becoming a narco state. Imagine, mayor of a major city giving this description that it risks becoming a narco state. She has some prescriptions which we don't agree with, but the description is important. So the illegal drug trade, and I quote, has grown more lucrative, professional, and ruthlessly violent. If you go to the police, the chief of the largest police union in Netherlands, Jan Stroejes, he said the country has a parallel economy controlled by organized crime groups, shootings, and killings. Move from Netherlands to Belgium. This is important because, all these are countries that we look up to. In Antwerp, in the last decade, there have been hundreds of shootings, grenade attacks, fires, bombings. And many were linked to gang-related violence, who were looking for the peace of the cocaine trade. The mayor of Antwerp has described the situation as being a much bigger threat than the 2016 Brussels terrorist bombings, right? The justice minister in Belgium, my counterpart, he has to live in safe houses because the police cannot guarantee his safety. Last year, the Belgian customs seized a record amount of cocaine, more than the customs and border officials of the entire United States. And the incinerators in Belgium couldn't burn the drugs quickly enough. And if you look at South America, 18 out of 21 countries are now the main sources of transit for the cocaine trade. You look at the US, the opioid epidemic has taken off 1 year from every male child born in the US. 1 year, every child. And you look at specific examples. You look at Oregon, 2020, they decriminalized the use and possession of what they call small amounts of drugs. cocaine, heroin, meth. What happened 2019 to 2022, in 3 years, number of drug overdose deaths, people dying, more than doubled. Homelessness became a problem. Situation on the streets got very bad. Crime. People felt very unsafe. Businesses started leaving. So this year, they changed the law. They reversed the course. Recriminalized possession of drugs. You turn to Thailand, Southeast Asia, right near us. Legalized cannabis in June of 2022. What happened? Within 6 months, the number of people addicted to cocaine went up 4 times. Young teenagers, children, they were starting to consume drugs. They take cookies, candies, sweets with cannabis. So now the Thai government has announced plans to ban the use. So I would say when you experiment with laws like this, you're experimenting with people's lives, a lot of innocent lives, and it's not easy to reverse courses. I gave many examples in Parliament, when I spoke. So we have always taken a tough stand, and we look at what's happening around the world. We know that we are a very big target for drugs, and this region is being flooded with drugs, but we have kept the situation relatively under control, and we go on the basis of evidence, not ideology. We don't do something because we want to do something. We do something because what is the end result? We want a crime-free, drug-free situation. Drug-free because the scientific evidence shows that it has got very deep negative consequences for people on your brain structure. And we make a distinction between drug traffickers and drug abusers. 2019, we changed the law. And if they only abuse drugs and haven't done any other crime, housebreaking, robbery, sexual assault, and so on, if they've only taken drugs, they receive treatment and they given support to carry on with their lives, given job support, emotional support, counseling, depending on their level of risk. And we try and minimize the disruption to their daily lives. And we try and give them a helping hand to move on with life. But if they are drug traffickers, we take a tough approach. Why? Because a guy wants to make money. It's a cynical crime. He wants to make money out of the misery and the deaths of other people. Right? It's a crime where the guy thinks it through. So we enhance the punishments, particularly for those who sell to young people. And the death penalty is imposed on traffickers who traffic beyond a certain amount. What is that amount? Take heroin. International media will say, small amounts. But it's 15 grams, which attracts a death penalty. 15 grams or more. What can 15 grams of pure heroin do? It can feed 180 abusers for a week. That's the amount. And so if you bring in 15 grams, in order to destroy 180 lives, some of whom will die early, some of whom might die immediately, more homicides, more crime, more women getting, sexually assaulted, and worse, then I say you face the death penalty because that's a serious deterrent. And we don't impose it purely as a punishment. I said evidence-based, science-based. You look at the evidence. It has been a very effective deterrent against drug trafficking. In the 1990s, we arrested about 6,000 drug abusers every year. That number has come down almost by half. Drug abusers, some people who take drugs, that's 3,000 drug abusers roughly now. So I would say that's 3,000 lives saved per year. Not a straight line, but it's a sort of broad indicator. 3,000 people who now can be parents to their children, sons to their parents, brothers to their sisters, not involved in crime, because often they get into crime to feed their drug abuse habit. 3,000 lives per year has been saved. But all things being equal, actually that number of 6,000 should have gone up 3-4 times. Why? Because there are more drugs available around the region. Singapore is much richer. Our ability to afford is greater. We are a magnet for drugs. So it's a much tougher environment, and yet the number has come down. So I would say, this is an important statistic. And when we introduced the death penalty for opium, the amount trafficked came down by 2/3 the next year. I can give you more stats later. if you wish. Yeah.
Okay, so I hear you. We hear you that our tough stance is effective, and to bring down the numbers of drugs being brought into Singapore. And I think it's an important distinction that you make: the treatment against drug abusers and the treatments against traffickers and the treatments for drug abusers. But in truth, the number of new abusers arrested in 2023 has increased, and more than half were below the age of 30. Youngest abusers can be as young as 14 years old. So what are some of the gaps perhaps that we need to address, and some of the ways that we can help these young abusers and help the situation?
This is a very important issue. Overall, if you look at the numbers, the drug situation is under control. But you know that you're swimming against a tide, because internationally there is a more permissive environment. Yeah. As I said in Parliament, if you look at Hollywood, you look at fashion, you look at stars, many of them openly use and promote the use of drugs. Many of them are also paid by the drug companies to glamorize the use.
Like part of your lifestyle, yeah.
Part of your lifestyle. And, we don't produce Hollywood films, as I said, but I would say despite all that, despite swimming against the tide, the message has gotten through both to our adult population and our student population. The stats I gave in Parliament, across the board, and MHA will release these statistics in due course, shows that the importance of not getting into drugs, the seriousness of, what drugs do to you, the negative consequences are understood. But, remember, we are exposed to global influences because we are an open system, open society. Our people travel. So it's a much tougher environment. And we, as usual, the way we will do these things is we combine our resources. We bring together different ministries. So there is an interministerial committee for drug prevention, specifically targeted at youths. I chair that interministerial committee. And we are working with MOE to see how this can be better covered, preventive drug education in the school curricula, and extending it to, many subjects, including GP. And all secondary schools have completed at least one preventive drug education engagement session in the last 2 years. And at the primary school level, 42,000 students from close to about 120 schools have participated in the anti-drug ambassador activity last year. And this year, my ministry is launching a major event in May. It's called the Drug Victims Remembrance Day. For us to remember the victims of drug abuse. They are not nameless, they are not faceless, and they shouldn't remain nameless and faceless. You saw some of them come to Parliament, and they were very, very glad. Many of them said, "Sir, we never expected to come to Parliament." So they felt honored, they felt good because they've kicked off the habit, and many of them are now giving back by becoming ambassadors themselves and promoting a drug-free culture amongst their social groups and volunteering. So who are the victims? The victims are those who take drugs, the drug abusers, and their families. When one or two parents are in jail, or now in rehab, what happens to the child? The innocent child is also a victim. Imagine having to be in foster care or growing up without that kind of love and attention and affection from parents. So lives are destroyed because the drug traffickers want to make money. The drug trade is lucrative and they want to profit from this suffering. And we want to bring that across. And in schools, institutes of higher learning, some agencies, we will be organizing activities around the Remembrance Day. And they will see what happens. They will see how, that drugs have destroyed lives. They will light candles in a safe way, different types of candles, but something for them to participate. And there will be roving exhibitions too. So many things to bring across this message to our young people and across Singapore as a whole.
If I can ask, follow up to that, Minister, For Remembrance Day, what is the larger goal or ambition, larger goal for having this Remembrance Day, other than celebrating the resilience and showing that your life does not end if you choose to move away from the power of
Actually,
drugs?
the main message is to have people understand, particularly young people understand, the negative consequences of drugs. So when they see the victims, they see what has happened, and they take part in it. They will be encouraged to write essays. They will be encouraged to come and light candles. They will be encouraged to think about it. It's experiential. It's not just somebody saying something. So they experience it for themselves in terms of what has happened to all these people. It's a more powerful way of bringing across the message that drugs cause serious damage to you. And also get them to empathize with the victims. So, promote empathy, sympathy, understand what victims go through, and also realize that they themselves should try and avoid it. So it is intended to be a very powerful message against the use of drugs, but also a second very important message is have some feeling for those who have become victims.
Is there a sense that we are, like you said earlier, fighting against the tide for these young people? They are surrounded, they are in an environment where there are constant exposure to misinformation. For instance, there's advocacy groups and pro-drugs users groups who say that it's okay, you can use drugs. The government may be telling you a different thing. Police tell you a different thing. But it's okay, you can control what you want. So what can we do to mitigate against this?
There will be people who do that. There are people, a small group, who actively go out and misstate what the government says. Anytime I make a speech, they will take some part and try and twist it and mislead people. I don't know what their agenda is. Because, if you talk about free speech, we need to have a robust debate.
Yep.
You take a position, I take a position, I explain, let Singaporeans decide which is accurate. But they will immediately say, I'm being victimized, But they can say whatever they want. They can lie, they can mislead, they can misstate, but we shouldn't respond. And in addition to that, they are basically doing what many groups in other countries have done, actively try and promote a drug lifestyle, a different approach. Say, you shouldn't be so tough, and people should be able to take drugs if they want. I mean, there are various categories of advocacy. Some advocate against death penalty, and, I can understand that many serious people will feel upset or uncomfortable with the death penalty. And I've said, I myself and my colleagues in cabinet and in government, who wants a death penalty? Nobody likes a death penalty. But as a policymaker, if you see that it saves more lives, then I think it's your duty to explain why we need it. So there are various viewpoints. But then there are people who actively try and mislead. And we must stand our ground and explain to the people why what we say is right and back it up, not just by assertions, but by statistics, research, facts.
Minister, in your interaction with youth and the younger audience, do you see that their impressions or their ideas of drugs and drug use is different from their previous generations? What was your impression of their views, and how do you think it's worrying?
No, I speak with thousands of them, and so do my colleagues. We go out, we speak in the schools, and young people are no different from you and me. What they are exposed to one set of information, and then, they think that may be right. When I speak with them and I explain to them the research, the background, the facts, I sit with about 300, and I talk to them. They understand. And once they understand, their viewpoints change. It's a question of showing them the facts. It's a question of showing them what's happening elsewhere. It's a question of showing them how, Singapore is different. And they realize. They understand immediately. Doesn't take very long. So, which is why we must continue both the retail messaging, which is to go to schools and explain, both by office holders as well as by others, civil servants and so on. But we must also have the schools themselves putting the message across, and the Drug Victims Remembrance Day, speeches, other ways of bringing it across. All of this will help. I think the young people are no different from anyone else. What is important is putting the facts across to them, and then let them come to their own conclusions.
I'm just curious, because one way I would think to prevent the younger people to get drugs or anybody else to get drugs is to cut off their supply, perhaps. But how do you? Previously, maybe you meet someone on the street, you buy it from them, perhaps. But how do you cut it off now when you can have delivery services, people meet online, they talk in Telegram chats?
Yes,
How
so it's more challenging.
Yep.
And that's part of the challenges we face. The challenges are multifold. It's a softer, more relaxed approach in other countries, including in the region. So that allows the proliferation of drugs and drug addicts. So if you move out of Singapore, you go to any of these countries, you're surrounded by this, and either legal or illegal. Some places are legal, some places are not legal, but your temptation to try is there. Second, there are many means of bringing it across to Singapore. To do drug control, I've always said there are two aspects to it. One, you need to deal with supply. You need to deal with traffickers. You need to deal with how the drugs come in. You need to restrict that. You wouldn't be able to completely do away with it, but you need to restrict it. Second, you need to also deal with demand. So that involves education. That involves explaining to our people that this is not good for you. And I think we have largely succeeded in explaining to our people. So the demand side we have managed. We have also largely succeeded in restricting supply. So we have managed to restrict supply. We have managed to constrain or manage the demand so that there isn't that much demand. It could have exploded, as I explained just now. But it's a constant challenge. And the traffickers use newer and newer methods. And we have to try and catch up. But I'm not saying it's easy. It's very difficult.
Speaking of the supply, bringing in drugs into Singapore, we have very tight border controls. But yet, drugs still manage to be brought in. So are there any loopholes in the system? Is it like a manpower issue? Is it where can we improve?
No, it's just that in the region there is a somewhat lax approach, and the drug kingpins go to people around and they say, look, I'll give you some money. Would you take it? Many people know the risks, but they say, maybe I'll be lucky and I'll get through. So they take the risk. But because our message and our tough stance is well understood, the drug kingpins find it difficult to find lots of people. If we didn't take a tough stance, even more, many multiples of this number of traffickers will be coming into Singapore because the money is good from their perspective. Yeah. For us, when we look at what they are getting, we may say, oh, it's such a small amount. But for them, that money is worth earning. And it's easy. Just come in, deliver the drugs and go off. So if we didn't have tough laws, that number will multiply, the number of people who are prepared to come in. So these guys who are coming in know the risks and they run the risks, number one. Number two, but the key point is not that they run the risk. The key point is that many others are staying away. Number two, the technology allows new ways of drugs coming in. So it's not so much a loophole, Telegram chats and drug coming through parcels. You just have to deal with it. It's very lucrative. There is money to be made. And therefore people do all sorts of inventive things. It's not so much a manpower issue. It's not so much a loophole. It's just that there is a lot of money to be made and people are prepared to try all sorts of ways to try and make that money. Yeah.
Talk about demand and supply of drugs. And you also mentioned just now about the misinformation and the propaganda around advocacy groups for drugs. What are the levers that the government perhaps can use to control these surroundings, the advocacy groups from doing what they do? Are there any levers?
they go out there and they express their views. We don't stop that. When they put out lies about what the government has said, we may issue a POFMA order. And that's about what we do. Otherwise, they do go out and they try and put out their viewpoint. And there is nothing to prevent us from going to Singaporeans and explaining that this is wrong, what they are misleading, and these are the consequences. What I find amusing is they put out their message. When we respond, they play victim. Oh, why are we being attacked, or why are these things said about us? Right. So they can say whatever they like. We mustn't respond. That's the idea of free speech.
Yeah.
Mr. Perhaps we can touch on the Malay community. Minorities still are the majority drug offenders in Singapore, at least, and we see an overrepresentation, I would say, of Malay drug abusers, Malay Muslim drug abusers. Where do you think the problem lies, and what can we do to tackle this issue as a community?
It's not only the Malay Muslim community. I would say overall the minorities are overrepresented. That's a fact. Beyond the proportions of in the population, overall population. If you look at the overall population, their percentage, and then you look at the drug abusers, their percentages, there is overrepresentation. This has always been the case, long been the case. So if you look at it as the glass half empty, this is worrying, and this is something that I've been concerned about for some time, and I wanted an intense laser focus on this, and I asked Faisal to take charge of this, MOS Faisal, Minister of State Faisal, who is an MHA, and I say, in order to tackle this, we need, of course, the government has got to come in, right? It has got to look at the problem and do what it can to deal with it. The community has to come in. And the parents. The role of the parents is very important. And from the government perspective, it's not just MHA, but it's also the schools and others. We need to be vigilant. So I would say that those efforts have borne fruit. Its results have been good. So this is the part where I say it is the glass is half full. The positive part. If you look at the efforts and the success, the total number of abusers, you can look at percentages, they are overrepresented, but if you look at the total number of abusers, it's come down significantly, new Malay drug abusers. So if you look at 2011, 13 years ago, new Malay drug abusers, 600. 2022, 2 years ago, it was 300. So in reality, the number has come down by half when it actually should be going up. Because the Malay community is also wealthier, there are more drugs around, and the number from 600 should have gone up 3 times at least, but it's come down to 300. So our efforts are working, but it's not proper to say, we have succeeded. You never succeed in this. And I would say, how have they been working? We went out, Faisal went out, I spoke with the Malay community leaders, organizations, and I said, look, this is a problem for all of us. Government will step in and partner you, but you must come in. And you must try and mobilize the parents for me. And you must mobilize the people on the ground for me. So AMP, Jamia, Pertapis, Mendaki, Muis, Madrasas, we have roped all of them. So this increases our touch points. And Faisal even got the barber shops and eating outlets to come in. So this very well-known campaign now, Dadah to Haram, has received tremendous support from the Malay Muslim community. You compare the time before the campaign and after the campaign. Now the message is there. Oh, Dadah to Haram. Everybody understands Dadah to Haram. And he has played a very significant role in engaging the community, the different partners. Work is extensive. It is regular. Every day, engage the community. Every month, the team the volunteers would be at all the mosques. The mosques have all come in. After Friday prayers, they hand out collaterals of the Dadah to Haram campaign logo. And every quarter, they outreach at the madrasas. It started last year. And we get good support from the madrasas and the asatizas. They also talk about the problems of drugs. And then now there is a program called Date Your Loved Ones Today. What is this? It's a flagship program for Dadah to Haram. During Ramadan, they distribute dates and they spread the message. So we get volunteers from the community handing out dates at the bazaars. Mosques also hand out dates to the congregants to spread the message. All these are innovative ways. So you say what they're doing all these things. That's why the numbers are coming down. And so there are regular touch points, outreach, the barber shops, they put up standees. We get the support of business owners. And the community also has understood the message. There are a lot of ground-up events, tremendous support from the community to try and raise awareness. So if you say mosques, for example, they partner with interest groups and they make cycling events, and then they spread the Dadah to Haram message. And another important part is the Fitra office. This is part of the M-Cube focus. And also this part is led by MOS Faisal. Since its launch, Fitra has increased the number of volunteers from 60 about 10 years ago to more than 700 last year. And there is a structured religious program. And every Friday prayers, the sermons, they are contextualized in the context of rehab needs of the inmates. And they also provide befriending services, case management support. So Fitra has galvanized support from all the 71 mosques. They provide support to the inmates because, you come out of rehab, you need emotional support, you need counseling. We help them try and find jobs. You need family support. Otherwise, the people who got you into trouble in the first place are the people waiting for you outside when you come out. Mm-hmm. But instead of that, now we have the mosque waiting for you. We encourage the family. We teach the families how to provide the support. And we have networks of desisters and others who have gone through the journey to tell them this can be done and encourage them in their work. So a lot. And if you look at also the Malay Muslim Organizations Rehab Network, it's a long title, but ORN, it formed in November 2021, again led by Faisal. So he has been doing a lot of this, bringing everybody together. It's a network of all the existing MMOs, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And they support my ministry, MHA's efforts in preventing drug abuse and preventing reoffending. And they been very helpful in creating collaborations among the MMOs to provide support again for the abusers, opportunities for the MMOs to increase their own game in terms of dealing with these issues. Just some of the examples, but all of this is gaining traction. So you go out there and you ask many people in the community, they would have heard of the program. There might have been some touch point and they will understand. It's a long effort and it's a hard journey, but it's a very fulfilling one.
Right. So would you say moving forward, a more targeted approach in terms of culture, your race, is this the way forward when it comes to tackling the drug issue? Since the effectiveness is slowly starting to be seen.
I would say that every effort helps, and in this we'll have to be guided by the community leaders and religious leaders, and what they feel would be a better way of putting the message across. I mean, we are public officials, we have one way of dealing with this, and that's why we partner the community leaders. The community leaders will have to tell us, okay, specific to the Malay Muslim community, putting the message across this way or dealing with this aspect of the cultural issues might be important. So we'll have to be guided by them. Yeah.
Speaking of culture, I think I want to ask, because in many other countries we see that there's studies being done relating drug abuse, drug use with race. I was wondering if Singapore has any such studies. Do we see into why people from a certain race are abusing more than others. And if there's such a study, what have you learned from it?
Well, I want to be careful there because I don't want to move to typecasting, nor do I want to have an explanation automatically, or it's because of culture, or it's because of certain characteristics. I start with skepticism about these sorts of suggestions in the first place. And then if experts tell me otherwise, I will listen. But so far, no one has suggested that to me, But I am more inclined to think that, look, you need to go to where people are. You need to see what kind of leadership they respect. People respect religious leadership. They respect community leaders. They respect the organizations. And for those who don't have these touch points, they go to eating houses. They go to barbershops, and our education system is reasonably good. All the communities get the benefit of the education system. And from there, they are able to understand facts, they are able to reason, and we support them. And for those who fall through the cracks, regardless of whether they are Malay, Indian, or Chinese, you see some characteristics. That's, how well they feel part of their functional family, how well their family is functioning, what sort of confidence levels do they have about themselves. I don't think that is restricted to, or, it's a peculiar issue structured around race. It's an individual issue, and we deal with that and we provide the support.
Part of dealing with repeat offenders, drug abuse, is, like you mentioned just now, having a group of desisters, a network of support for these abusers. So, I mean, we cannot overstate the importance of these networks. And moving forward, how do you think we can get even more or do more in this area to get the network?
We're constantly working on it. As you see the figures, more and more desisters, more and more people coming forward. Faisal is working hard, as I say. I've empowered him. He's doing a lot on the ground, and he gets good support from the other MPs too. And Minister Mas has been very supportive in dealing with the community organizations and encouraging them to work with us. And the tremendous work the community leaders put in, the mosque leaders, MOIS, community leaders, the organization leaders, they're all coming in, and more people. But, you must also remember, Singapore, we all lead busy lives. Work takes up a lot of time. Then you need time for your family. So you need to be understanding of that. But within that framework, the number of people who come forward is quite good. It's impressive. It's because we provide the structure and people come in. You compare it with other places. So I would say there are a lot of positives you can take away, and you learn the lessons and you try and increase the number. And recidivism rates overall have been coming down. The number of people who reoffend has come down. We would like it to come down even more, but it is coming down.
Talking about offenders, perhaps female offenders, they, especially in maybe the Malay community, they seem to be largely come because the drug abusers, they are, I would like to say, overrepresented in prison. So, what are your comments on that?
Well, I don't think it would be fair to say females are overrepresented. But in fact, females, the less women get into drugs compared with men, regardless of community. It's usually the men who are the majority in all three communities as well as the other communities. The women, of course, proportionately, there are more Malay women compared with others. But again, the overall numbers are coming down. And, I've made the points earlier about that.
Okay. Minister, perhaps if you can move on to another topic about, again, we revisit our strict anti-drug laws. Are there some misconceptions that I have about our drug laws that you feel are common, and perhaps you can make some comments to correct some of these misconceptions.
I think Singaporeans understand the government's stance, the way we have been explaining it. I think Singaporeans understand, but there are attempts to mislead people about our stance and the death penalty. There is clear evidence that the death penalty is a very effective deterrent. I said earlier, in the 1990, we introduced the death penalty if you trafficked more than 1,200 grams of opium. Immediately, you take the 4-year period before that and the 4-year period after the law was introduced, the death penalty was introduced, there was a 66% reduction in the average net weight of opium trafficked. Now, 2018, MHA did a study, now 6 years ago, amongst convicted drug traffickers. And many of them admitted, yes, we look at the amounts and then we traffic below that because we don't want to run the risk. And so that they don't face the death penalty. What does this do? It restricts the amount of drugs coming in. It makes it difficult for the drug kingpins because they've got to find more people to traffic the drugs. And I told you earlier, the number of drug abusers in Singapore has come down almost by half over the last 30 years. And this is very significant. In 2021, I said, look, let's go to the region. There are some places from which many of our drug traffickers come. Many people know. Let's do a study. How do they view our death penalty? The results were stunning. It was very surprising to me. 86% of them, these are outside of Singapore, 86% of them believed that the death penalty in Singapore means that makes people not want to commit serious crimes in Singapore. 86%. Nearly 9 out of 10. Singapore has death penalty. I think that's very effective. And 87% said, because of this, people will not want to traffic substantial amount of drugs. That includes themselves, right? Some of them. And 83%, 8 out of 10, said, actually, the death penalty is more frightening and more effective. If it was changed to life imprisonment, it would not have the same effect. So what does this mean? They all understand. Our police officers, our CNB officers, immigration officers, not corrupt. If you go in, very high likelihood of getting caught. If you get caught, high likelihood that you will face the death penalty. And I don't want to face a death penalty. That's what 8 out of 10 believe. That is why supply into Singapore is substantially restricted. So this is an answer to those who say, take a tough stance, but remove the death penalty and put in the life imprisonment. And but this small group, activists, what they say is, they will focus on one drug trafficker. They will say he's got sisters, he's got brothers, he's got mothers, he grew up in this way, he's a poor boy, please. They will publish videos, but they will leave out the facts. They will leave out the fact that he was bringing in this to make money and destroy the lives of people in Singapore, most of them Singaporeans. They will talk about the traffickers' children. They will leave out the children in Singapore who are going to die and who are the innocent victims, the real innocent victims. Victims also have wives, sisters, parents, children. So last year, a man was convicted of committing incest with his 17-year-old daughter. He was giving her meth and she became reliant on him. And so in order to sustain her addiction, she made no report against him. Just one example. Thankfully, cases like this are small in Singapore overall. Another case, man under the influence of LSD, I spoke about it in Parliament, stabbed his own mother and grandmother to death. There's also a heartbreaking case. 2.5-year-old girl, she was assaulted to death by her own father because he was a meth abuser and he goes out of control. And then he burnt the body. Who speaks for this girl? And in Singapore, we count this in the fingers of two hands. But around the world, you're talking about thousands. So, and then you look at people. Do they support it? I looked at the results. And in the last 2 years, from 2021 to 2023, because we did a survey in 2021, we did a survey in 2023. In 2021, 74% agreed or strongly agreed that the death penalty should be used for the most serious crimes. Last year, that went up to 77%. 3% is statistically significant. So 77% of Singaporeans, so when the international media and the activists say the death penalty is controversial, 77% of Singaporeans, despite all these arguments, the percentage goes up because the government comes out and explains our position, and there's a lot of trust that we care for Singaporeans. And, in 2021, 66% agreed or strongly agreed that the mandatory death penalty is an appropriate punishment. What happened last year? 69%, went up by 3%. Amidst all the debate, more people are now supportive of the death penalty and the mandatory death penalty. Why? I think Singaporeans understand the message.
I was wondering if you have any experience, in your interaction with drug abusers or their families, the victims. Are there any that stood out to you, their stories that's most heartbreaking? Or
Many. I haven't met with those who killed their child. They're serving time for that crime or did unspeakable things. But I've met with many desisters, many who are now walking the journey of trying to recover from drugs. And the latest was, of course, in Parliament. The warmth, the feeling that they have, confidence, the gratitude they feel towards the community for helping them and for us in giving them a helping hand. It's tremendous. And just yesterday or day before, I received an email from one of those who had been in Parliament. He said he was there with his wife. He cannot thank us enough for both recognizing that there are many victims like himself and that they are not nameless or faceless. And we recognize them, we help them, and they are now grateful that they are on this journey. So he emailed me. But, there are many, and they share their stories with us. And it's touching because in any other country, first world country or third world country, this man and those people who turned up, many of them would continue to be plagued by drugs. A good number would have gone on to commit other crimes. Some of them would have killed, I'm talking statistically, killed others. Some would have robbed. Some would have sexually assaulted. The robberies would be to fund their drug habit. And there is no substantive, effective system because you can't do this alone. You come out of it, you are out of rehab, you need a job, you need somebody to help you get a job, you need emotional support, you need community support, you need family support, you need counselors. So many people have to come together and try and help you and walk with you in that journey. And that is not often present in many countries. You would have seen a large number who would have been seriously and badly damaged, and you would have seen the other victims we never remember about, which is the children, their children. Their life's gone, their children's life's gone. And then the cycle will repeat itself because the children will grow up in that environment.
And with that note, Minister, perhaps any last words to tell our audience about your recently when you are talking to some students, I believe you said that as long as you are Home Minister, you will continue this fight, this war against drug and to protect the lives of Singaporeans. Perhaps you would like to say any last words?
Well, it speaks for itself. You come into public service because you believe in things. You need to have a passion. And in this context, this is not the only context for me, but in this context, knowing what I know, knowing the evidence, my conscience will not be clear if I went and softened our stance on drugs. We need compassion, but we need clarity of thought as well. And so compassion goes towards the drug abusers. Clarity of thought has got to be there because trafficking is a cynical crime. It is done by people who are doing things which will destroy the lives of Singaporeans and people in Singapore. Some of them may not be Singaporeans, but they are living here. And I cannot, in good conscience, take or approve a change that will kill more lives in Singapore. And we cannot look into the eyes of a 2-year-old girl knowing that because I've changed my system, one day she or others like her will get killed and will face violence and assault. How can you? So that's what I meant.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Mr. Shanmugam, for appearing on tBH. We thank you for your candid sharing and for your time here.
Thank you.